Alrighty, let's get started. So, first of all, any questions about anything so far? Anything we did, any of the assignments, anything we covered, anything at all?
I'll ask it in person.
Okay. So, we are already at week 3, right? According to my count. And what we're going to do today is talk about lists. So we already, I introduced lists a little bit, and today we're going to go deeper. And not a whole lot of assignments today, but yeah. Okay. So first of all, there's a couple of links in there under Monday. So introduction to lists, right? What's a list? Well, let me just copy this thing so I don't have to type it. So here's an example of a list, right? So this is a list, and it's just a variable name, and it's equal to something in square brackets and separated by commas from each other, right? So each of these things on the list are the elements of a list, right? So this is the first element, this is the second element, this is the third element, fourth element, right? So each of these are elements of a list. Okay? So element 1 of my word list has an index of 0, right? So they always start at 0. Okay. So if I wanted to, I can go and I can show you the different elements of this list. So for example, if I wanted to show you the first one, I'll just say my word list, square brackets, 0. Okay, and if I run this thing, there you go. It shows you the A. Okay, so if I wanted to do the other ones, I can do the same thing. All right, so that's my first one, second, third, fourth. All I have to do is change the indexes. That's the 1, that's a 2, that's a 3. All right, run it again. And there you go. So it shows you the list. Okay.
And the indexes are assigned automatically?
They're automatically assigned. The indexes are automatically assigned, and they always start at 0. Okay. So they always start at 0. First index is always 0. Last index is always 1 less than how many things you have in the list. So we have 4 things in the list, and the last one is 4 minus 1, 3, right? Okay, we can figure out how many things are in the list using the len. So see how many things are in a list. I can just say, all right, print there are, and I'm going to do len, my word list. Len is a built-in function into Python, and it allows you to check to see how many things are in a list. Okay, so let's see, there are this many elements in the list. Okay, and if I run this thing, there are 4 elements in the list. Okay, all right. And then I can use this len business to show you the last one. All right, I can copy this. Actually, yeah, just copy this thing here, and then I'm going to show you the last element. Show the last element of a list using its len, right? The length, right? So I'm just going to do print my word list, square brackets, and I'm going to throw that thing in there, and I'm going to go, let's just run it like this so you can see what happens. So I'm going to run this like that, and I'm going to run it. Oops, list index out of range. Why is that?
Because the length is 1 minus.
There you go, I just told you. So there's the last one is actually the length minus 1. So this thing showed you that there are 4 elements on the list, right? But if I'm trying to do the last one, if I put 4, right, if I go in there and I just do this thing here now. So print, if I took this out, if I took this here out, and I just did my word list square brackets 4, right? That's the one that's going to give me this list index out of range. Okay? So this is index error list index out of range, right? So that's bad. You don't want to do this. Okay? So I'm going to put a comment in there. And that's the reason why this one here gave you that error. Right? There's no number 4. It goes from 0 to 3. If you're trying to push it to go further than it is, it doesn't work. So how am I going to correct this thing here? -1. Okay. So I go in there, throw a -1, run it, and now you should see, you know, the last one shows twice, right? Words, words, twice. Any questions so far? Okay. So let's see what else I got in there. All right, so these lists, they don't have to be of just, you know, words. You can have lists of, you know, let's say I want to do a num list, right? I'm going to go equals 1, 2, 3, 4, right? You can have numbers. And by the way, in other programming languages, they call these arrays, right? So if you have a list, or if you have something that's of all the same types, like this here that we have, they're all integers, right? And up there we had only strings. That will be an array in other languages, right? So in other languages, there's a restriction that the things on the list have to be of the same type. Python doesn't care, okay? So, and by the way, let me show you another way to show these lists. So if I want to show the whole list with all its elements, right, I'm going to go in there, print a num list equals, and then I'm going to do a num list, whoops, list, right? And if I run this, it shows you the list like this, right? Which is exactly what it is. Okay, if you don't like the square brackets, if you don't like the commas in between, there's another way to do this. And you can do this whole thing on top, right? And I'm just going to go and add a little asterisk in front of this thing. So I'm going to add a little asterisk in here so you know which one's what. Run it again. And there you go. So if you put a little asterisk in front of the thing, it gets rid of the square brackets and it shows it without the commas also. Okay? I personally prefer the top one because it shows me that it is a list. Okay, there's other things out there like tuples, and you know, we want to identify what's what. Okay, so I personally like to do it this way. All right, so what else? What else? All right, so far I've been showing you lists of only the same type, right? Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to get a list and I'm going to, you know, mix it up. I'm going to throw in different things in the list. So I'm going to say, all right, this is a mixed list. And I'm going to go in there, I'm going to say, okay, this thing is equal to 1, then I'm going to do 3.14, then I'm going to do a string, right? There's no characters in Python, so we'll just leave it at that. So it's all of different kinds. Okay, other programming languages will give you an error because they can only handle one data type per list. Python doesn't care. So if I wanted to, I can go and show you this. So I'll print a mixed list, and I run this, and there you go, right? No problem. Okay. Not only that, but from what I kind of mentioned to you already, a string is a type of a list, right? So what this tells you is you can have a list inside of a list. Okay. So just to show you, like, so I'm going to say list of lists, right? And this is the kind of stuff that we're going to do when we do data mining. You're going to read a file, you're going to read it line by line, then you can split each line, and there's going to be multiple lists inside of each of these lists. But anyway, so for example, this one here is going to be, what did I have? The first one is going to be my word list. Second one is going to be a num list. Third one is going to be a mixed list. All right, I run it. Oh, I should have done an equal. Okay. And for some reason I can't select things, so I got to go around with the cursor. And that's why, in case you're wondering, why am I not copy pasting? Because I can't click for some reason right now. Anyway, so if I do print list, let me label it, list of lists, comma, let's do an equal in there, list of lists, and show this thing. Ta-da, there's your list, right? So you can see that it puts square brackets around each of these lists that are inside of the bigger list, which is this outside bigger square bracket. Okay? So I guess my question to you is, now that you know, well, let me just show you. I'm not even going to ask you. So let's do this. I want to show this list right here, this first list. Okay? What am I going to do? I'm going to go in there. I'm going to do print list of lists 0, right, equals, and list of lists 0. Okay, show that. So there you go, list of lists 0, that's the first element of this big list, is this little list here, right? What if I wanted to show, let's say I want to show the first element of this one. So I don't want to just show the whole thing, I want to show the A. How do I do that? 0, it starts at 0. Remember? 0.0. So it's going to be, I'm going to go in there, I'm going to add another square bracket, 0. And then in here I'm going to add another square bracket, 0. I'm going to run this thing again. There you go, that's the A. Okay? And then you can go even deeper and deeper and deeper into the rabbit hole. So you can go, you know, sub 0 of 0 of 0 of 0. If you really want to go and, you know, find, you know, what's the element of a list inside of a list inside of a list, that's how it works. Okay? There's no limit of how many lists inside of lists you can have. You can go crazy, but just don't do it. Okay? Any questions so far? Make sense? Okay, so lists are, you know, they come in super handy. So that's the first one. And let's see what's the next one that I have. Okay, making an empty list. All right, so let's say so far you've seen all this stuff, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to turn it off because I don't want it to show me all these things all the time. So I'm going to turn this off. Okay, so what I want to do now is, and you're going to have to do this. I'm going to ask you, all right, get the user to type in a bunch of numbers and put these in the list, and you're going to be like, well, how do I do that? You're going to have to add things to a list. Okay, so in order for you to add things to a list, you need to have a list that exists already. So how do you make an empty list? So it's basically like having sum, making it equal to 0, and then adding things to it, kind of. All right. So okay, so make an empty list, and I'm just going to say that I used that name already. Okay, a list, or let's call it, yeah, a list. Okay, is equal to just square brackets. You don't have to put anything in these square brackets. That's an empty list, okay? And if I wanted to show it to you, print a list, it will show you an empty list. Okay, so one thing that you want to know how to do for this class and the assignments that are coming is be able to add elements to the list. And in order for us to add elements, what I'm going to show you is just one of many ways, and that is to add to the end of the list, right? Elements to the end of the list, and we're going to use append. Okay, so I'm going to do a list dot append. Let's do a 1. Okay, and then I'm going to show you this thing again, and run it. There you go. There's a 1 in there. Okay, maybe I want to add something else to it. Let me copy this one. All right, I want to put a word in it to it. Hello. All right, I'm going to show you this thing again. Run it. There you go. So that's how you add to a list. For the assignments that I'm going to give you, you're not going to have to remove things from a list. So I'm just going to show you what you need, but there's all kinds of other fancy things you can do to a list. You can tell it to pop which means remove the last thing of the list. You can tell it to remove a specific index, like go and get rid of that first one here, right? So you can do these kind of things, but I'll keep it simple for now. Okay, and so yeah, that's as far as making an empty list and adding to it. Any questions? Make sense? Pretty basic so far. All right. So what else do I have in there? Next, the length. I already showed you the length. Right. So use the len of the list -1. Right. That was one of the things I showed you. Changing things in the list, right? So I already showed you how to show the things on the list. Now I showed you how to add things to a list. And what I'm going to do is, let me turn this piece off. I'm going to change things in a list, right? I'm going to call this my B list. B list is equal to, let's do this. It's going to be Alex, all right. And throw in some commas in there. Okay, so that's my list. If I want to show it to you, print B list, run it. There's the list, okay, but I want to change the first letter to uppercase. No problem. I go in there and I do B list 0 is equal to just uppercase A. I could also do B list 0 dot upper. I'm not sure if that's going to work for a list, so let's not even go there. Okay, that would work for a string. Okay, so if I do this and then I go in there and I show you the list again, you're going to see that I have changed the list, the first element. All right, there you go, uppercase. Okay, so any questions? Make sense? Right, changing an element of a list. So this is change an element of a list. Okay, and by the way, the difference between strings and lists is not that much, right? A string is just a bunch of characters together in between quotes or single quotes, right? You can use indexes to show the letters. You can do the len of a string to show the last one. That's no problem. The one thing you can't do is you can't do this to a string. Okay, you cannot go in there and tell a string, okay, change that first one to this something else, because strings are immutable. Okay, so it's an immutable type of list. You could change the whole list. You can tell the string, okay, make it to equal to something else completely, the whole thing, but you can't change individual things of a string. So that's an immutable thing. And we'll get to that when I get to strings. Right, so changing elements, all that good stuff. So that's that. Okay, lists and loops. All right, so let me go back to this. So if I wanted to, I can go in there and do, let's say, turn this piece off now. Okay, so use a loop. Use a loop to show every element of a list. Right? So how do you think I'm going to write my loop? For I in range, where's the range going to start? What value? 0. Okay, and where is it going to end? What was the last one? Length -1, but keep in mind that the loop automatically goes to, let's call it C list. The loop automatically goes to one value less than this. So it's kind of built into the loop itself, that idea that we're going to use this for lists a whole lot, so why are we going to go and do the -1 every time? No, we're not. So it's just that. Okay, and I'll show you, so let me create a list in here. So this is C list is equal to A, B, C, D. All right, well, let's do one more, E. Okay, and so first thing I'm going to do is and I was telling this to a whole lot of people last time when we started doing, loops, is don't even bother going in there and trying to figure out the whole problem at once. First, you're going to check to see if every little piece that you have works. Okay, so first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to see if this loop goes through all the indexes that I want. And why don't I change this I to just I'll call it index. All right? So for index in range to that, from 0 to this, I'm going to show you index. Print index equals index, and run this thing. And there you go, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. And just to remind you, the indexes, right? Index is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. All right? So that's what I generated here. So the loop here changes index is equal to 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Right? So all we got to do is, instead of showing these values here, finally I can select, instead of showing these values here, what we're going to do is we're going to plug this index into my list. All right? So I'm not going to show it, but notice what I just did. This is, believe it or not, no matter how complicated the problem is, I will do this first. I want to see if this thing is going through the list. Sometimes I'm thinking that I'm working with something, but then when I do this, it's going to show me, wait, there's nothing in it. So do that first. Okay, so I'm going to plug in print, and let's just do it like this. I'm going to say clist square brackets index. All right, so I'm just plugging in these values right here into my list, just like I would, like so. Okay, so I go in there and I run it again. There you go. Okay. Any questions? Still makes sense? Not too bad? Okay. Okay, so if you want to get fancy, you can show them. So instead of just showing it like this, what I like to do is I like to get a little fancier. I just do this print. I'm going to do clist square brackets, and then here I'm going to put index variable. Let's close the square brackets equals, and then it's going to be clist index. All right? So this piece here is going to just show me the value that's going to get plugged in here in the square brackets, and the other one after that is going to show me the actual index itself, or the element itself. Okay? So just again, this is these are the elements. Element, this is your first element, this is your second element. So first element is A or clist 0, right? And your second element is B or clist 1, right? So what I'm going to do is here, and bless you, here I'm throwing in this number, and in the next one after, I'm showing you this here, right? The actual element. Okay? So let's go in there and run this thing. Hopefully it works. And there you go. So I like to show them like this. It's cleaner, it's neater. You don't have to, right? If you did it, either one of these. So first, remember, just whenever you write a loop, first thing you want to do is check to see if the loop's working. Is it happening as many times as you want? You had that problem with the 30-day penny. People were trying to solve the problem with the penny. Like, wait, hold on. Make the loop that happens 30 times first. Does it happen 30 times? Okay, and then move on from there. If you do this incremental development, you do one little thing, show it to yourself, then move on to the next step. It will be much clearer. That's how you're supposed to solve these problems. You're not going to write the car to drive itself all at once. What you're going to do is you're going to break down the big problem into super small, easy, manageable sub-problems, and then tackle those individually, right? And within what proximity is on the left? Okay, then check the proximity, all these different things, as far as programming a car or whatever. Okay, so any questions so far? So this is a loop that happens as many times as there are numbers. I mean, as there are elements in the list, and showing these elements with a loop. Make sense? We're good? All right. Let's see what else I got. Yeah, changing. And I can use a loop, right? So let's say I wanted to, let me turn this off for a second. All right. And you're going to have to do something like this when you get to the locker problems. Right? So there's one assignment that comes up pretty soon that has to do with lists, but I'm not even going to tell you about it yet, so I don't scare you. But what I'm going to do is, let's say I want to make a list with only zeros in it, right? Or let's make it with I want 100 zeros. 100 zeros in it. Okay? So what am I going to do? First, I'm not going to go in there and do, okay, let's call this a D list. All right? D list. What am I going to do? Do this 100 times? 0, 0, 0. No, that defeats the purpose of a list. What I'm going to do is I'm going to make an empty list, right? Then I'm going to make a loop that happens 100 times. So for I in range from 0 to 100, steps of 1. First step is always I'm going to show myself the I equals I. Does it happen 100 times? I mean, it should, but let's just give it a shot anyway. All right, there you go. It should happen 100 times. I'm going to kill this thing so it doesn't waste too much time. Okay, so it happens 100 times. You should see it first. And then what I'm going to do is I am going to just add 100 numbers to this list. So I'm going to turn this off. And I'm going to do, all right, dlist.append. And I said I wanted a bunch of zeros. So I'm going to add zeros. There you go. Okay? So is this going to work? I don't know. Like baby steps, baby steps. Next step is I want to show myself the list. Did I get 100 in it? Well, the easiest thing to do is just do the length. So print len of dlist. And then later on, when we start doing data mining, this kind of stuff comes in handy because your data mining project, the biggest one at the end, you have to read a file with like 1,300 lines in it. It's going to take a long time for this thing to show 1,300 lines. So I just want to show, do I get that many things in it first? And run it. So it should show 100. Yep, good. Okay, I got 100 things in my list. The next thing I want to do is, what the hell, I'm going to show you the whole list. So print. The slow part, and actually it's slower on a Mac than it is on a Windows, is just how the things are displayed, are timed. So the Mac shows it slow, slow, slow. On a Windows, it flies right through them. If you don't want to, just wait for it to show every single one, just show the whole thing at once. All right, so I'm just going to do, okay, dlist. So now, before I found out that this thing is 100, and we have 100 things in it, so let's just label it. So there are that many numbers in the list. All right, and then this is going to be the actual list because I'm not going to sit there and count them. Okay, ta-da. So that's a list with 100 numbers. Okay, but later on, maybe I want to go and change these numbers to ones, which you're going to have to do for the lockers problem. And by the way, I keep talking about the lockers problem. The lockers problem is you get 1,000 lockers and 1,000 students, right? So initially lockers are all open or unlocked, whatever, I don't remember. Okay, but let's say they're all open, right? And then the second part is the first student goes and locks all of them. How am I going to lock them? Well, let's just say I'm going to make them all equal to 1. So that's the next one. So I'm going to go in there, and what am I going to do? Am I going to go manually change every single one of them? No, there's 1,000 of them. I don't have that much time. Okay, I'm going to go in there. So this is change all the zeros to ones. Okay, so I go in there and I say, okay, I'm going to use, and then by the way, recycle your loops. Okay, copy paste this stuff because believe it or not, you're going to repeat the same loop over and over and over a whole bunch of times most likely. Okay, so you don't have to write it. If you want to write, go ahead. And I'm going to say, all right, dlist square bracket I, is equal to 1, right? Change them all to 1s. And then after that, I have to check to see if the thing that I wrote works. Remember, just a few lines of code and then do a print. Show yourself what you're working with. So print, delist, and now it should be all 1s. Ta-da. Okay? Any questions? All right. Yes?
Might be a little bit later, but say you had a new student
Mhm.
join. So there's going to be like 101, and you needed to stick them like this name this alphabetically, like somewhere in the middle. And you need to put them in the middle and then move all the rest after that down one.
You could do that. That's the insert. So yes, you can insert. So what I showed you was append. Append to a list. There's also an insert. There's a way for you to tell, okay, insert, and then you give it the index and then what you're inserting. There's ways to do that too.
And it automatically moves everything after down?
Yep. Yeah. Same thing with removing. If you let's say you have a bunch of students and you say, all right, I want to insert right here. Yeah, you can insert here and all these other ones are going to get moved. Or if you want to remove this one, right, all these other ones are going to get shifted to the left. So yeah, there's beautiful. I mean, it's super easy to work with lists in Python. Lists, strings. That's why it's a data mining language. It makes things easy. Okay, if you try to do this in like Java, which is probably like one of the closest ones, because Java is good with strings, but you're gonna have to write so much stuff just to get it going. It's not even funny. Okay, so anyway, so that's that. So adding, again, adding to a list, and then the application, practical application is changing things on the list. And again, you would use a loop. You're not gonna go in there and manually change things. Okay. So that's that. And all right, so other things that you should be able to do is counting things that are in the list or searching through a list. Okay, so I'm going to turn this piece off. I'm going to run out of letters for lists. Okay, so this is what I'm going to do now is search through a list and see if an element is in it. Okay, so let's say I'm going to go back to the, I'm just going to type it up. So this is elist now is equal to, I'm going to go with numbers. So 1, 2, 3, 4, I'm going to throw a 3.5 in there, 3.5. All right, now let's leave it there. 3, and then maybe I'll skip the 3. Hold on. 1, 2, 4, 5, 6. Right? So what I'm going to do is, and I notice some of you are trying to Google answers and stuff like that. And this is the point where I'm really going to get annoyed if you start Googling answers, because I'm expecting you to do it this way. And if you go online and you try to find some shortcut that, oh, there's this little way that I can do it, you're going to get a fat 0 on that. Okay, just so you know, So, and the reason I'm doing this is because searching through a list is something fundamental. You should know how to do it, and it's not that hard. Okay, here it goes. So let's say I'm looking for, let's say here, look for the number 3, right? So I'm going to go, all right, for I in range, and it's always the same, from 0 to the length to the E list, right? Steps of 1. I'm not even going to bother checking to see if it happens as many times as I want, because I know it will. Next thing is I'm going to do an if, okay? And I'm going to check to see if my E list square bracket I is equal to 3. And that's it. And I can just show you something like, all right, 3 was found, right? And if I run this code, it shouldn't show me that message. Nothing. Right? Well, that's not maybe what I want. Let's say I want to see, I'm going to also see a message if it is not found. Right? So how am I going to do that? Easiest thing is just say, all right, found is equal to true or false. Right? I'm making a variable found, which is equal to false initially. False is a Boolean data type, so the computer knows what false is. It's just false, right? And then in here, what I'm going to do is, if I find it, I'm just going to say found equals true, right? And I can show you at the end, print the 3 was found in the list, right? I'm going to run it, whoop, comma, found. Run this. Nope, didn't find it, right? Not that hard. That loop that we've been recycling all this time, plus a little if in there, which is, you know, it totally makes sense, right? And then in there you have some kind of a variable, and you change that variable. Okay? Yes, sir.
If it's false, could you then after go append and put 3 in?
Yeah, I could do that. All right. So if that's that, I can do So the question was, can we append 3 if? So append 3 if it was not found. Yeah, I can do that. I can just say, all right, list that append, and then I'm going to go throw in a 3 in there. But actually, I don't want to do it here, because what's going to happen is, no, that's not here. You don't want to put that here because that doesn't make any sense. You take this out. So what I want to do is, I'm going to do it after. So I'm going to say, all right, if found is equal to false. By the way, I can also say not found, or, all right, I'll just leave it like that. If found is equal to false, I can just do the append business. All right? And then, print list just to see it. There you go. All right? Yep. Okay. So this was append 3 if it was not found. Okay. So let's say what else I want to do. Let's say I want to count. Let me just turn this piece off now. All right. So finding thing on a list, right? That's one. Let's say I want to count how many times a thing appears on the list, right? So I'm going to go in there, and what do I use? Flist now. Flist is equal to 1, 2, 3, 3, 3, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? So now what I want to do is I want to count how many 3s are in the list. Okay? I go in there and say, guess what? Same loop. For I in range from 0 to the length of f list, steps of 1. I'm going to have an if, right? And same as before, I'm going to have, all right, if my f list square bracket I is equal to the 3 is what I'm looking for, I'm going to have to count. Remember how I told you that counting is going to pop up everywhere? Here it is again. Okay, so what do I have to do? Make a variable count, make it equal to 0, okay? And count it. Count is equal to count plus 1, also known as count plus equals 1. Which one you write is up to you. I kind of like the second one because it's shorter, but maybe in the beginning of your programming, career, it will make more sense this, because I'm telling it you are equal to your old value plus 1, right? Anyway, so I'm going to count how many 3s I have in there. How many do I have? 1, 2, 3, 4, right? And it helps for you to start with something very small and very manageable before you go crazy with some really big lists, right? Does it work for a tiny little list with 3, 4 things? If it works, most likely it will work for a really, really huge list also. So I'm going to go in there and say print the number 3 was found counts times. All right, and run this thing. There you go, 4 times. Okay? And again, there's a built-in Python function that will count for you. It will do something like this. I don't even remember what it is because I don't use it, right? And the advantage of knowing how to do it this way is like you're not going to have to think, oh, well, how do I do it in this particular language? It's all the same in all different languages. Whether you're in C++ array or in a Java array, or pick a language, list, whatever, this is always going to work. Every language supports figuring out how many things are in it, right? Every language will let you write a loop like this. Every language has ifs, and working with arrays or lists is the same. So if I teach you the universal way, You don't have to go and, figure out how to do it in every other possible language. That's how you do it in all of them. Okay? Which is why you're going to see in a lot of these assignments that follow, I'll tell you, you're not allowed to use any built-in Python functions. If it looks easy, you're not allowed to use it. All right? So unless you write the loop yourself, you could write a function that counts things for you and then recycle it for the rest of the semester, but we're not at functions yet. And I'll show you how to do functions very soon. Okay? So this is count how many times an element appears in the list. And let's do count. It's basically the same thing, but I'm going to repeat it. And this time I'm going to copy this whole thing. So this time I want to count not how many threes, but I want to count whatever element the user wants in the list, right? So I'm not going to be restricted to a 3 this time. I'm going to tell the user, all right, what do you want to look for? Okay, so I'm going to go in there. I'm going to say to find some variable that makes sense is equal to int input. I'm restricting it to an int because I know these are going to be all integers, keeping it simple. And let's say, what number do you want to find? And then let them enter it. And then all I got to do is change this 3 that I have right here. The 3 here is just going to go to find. And then this 3 here also, right? I'm going to take it off. And 2 commas in there. And this is to find was found count times. So then you can run the program. All right? What number do you want to find? Oh, I want to find 99. 0 times. Okay, great. How about I want to go try 1. Found 1 times. Okay, let's go try the number 3. 3. Found 4 times. Okay? So that's how you find something in the array or in a list. Okay? You don't have to go and look up how do you find something in Python in Google, because it's not going to help you. Somebody's going to tell you, you use the find thing. No, you get a 0 for that. Okay? You write your own loop, you put an if in it, then you make a variable count, make it equal to 0, and then you add to count every time you find it. Simple. It doesn't get that, any simpler than that. Okay? What else do I want to do? Maybe I want to do, let's go and mess. I'll leave this, all right? So I can make separate examples for each thing that I'm trying to show you. Okay? So let's say I want to find the sum of the things on the list, right? What do you think I'm going to do? I'm going to recycle the same thing. Let me just copy this. Yeah, I stay with the same name, whatever. All right, I'm going to stay with the F list. I'm not going to change any more names. Okay. All right, so this time is an F list, and what I'm trying to do is want to find the sum of all elements in the list. Okay? And yes, Python has a very easy way to do this. You can do print sum of numbers in a list is sum. That's why sum turns purple, F list, because it's a reserved function that does something, and then it will show you. Right? Guess what? You don't get to do that. You're not allowed to do that. You do this, it's like you didn't do anything. I might even take extra points off, okay, because you didn't read my instructions. So you don't get to do this. So let me just tell you what, right? This is an example of what not to do. You don't get to use any Python built-in functions. Like it has a sum, it has an average, it has a min, it has a max, right? If it looks like it will do the job for you, I'm considering it a plagiarism if you didn't write the code yourself. All right? And all it takes for you to write the code is write a freaking loop, put an if in it, and you're done. Okay? So now I'm going to look for the sum. Okay? So don't do this. Don't do this. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in there. I'm not going to count. Well, let's do the average, sum and average. So I'm going to do sum, and average of all elements in the list. Okay? So I go in there. I'm going to still need a count. I'm going to make a variable sum. Python has the built-in function sum, but since you don't get to use it, I'm going to override it equal to 0, right? And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in there, and I'm not going to have an if because I'm not looking for a particular thing, and I'm going to count every single one of them. Actually, I don't even need a count, right? I know how many things are in the list. It's the length of f list. That's how many things. I don't need a count. All right, so get rid of the count. Not that you can't count, but what's the point? Okay. I mean, there will be examples where, you know, you read a bunch of things from a file and then you try to count how many things you read, that kind of stuff, but we're not there. We're not doing that. Okay, so no counting. Let me take this whole thing off. All right. No counting. And again, I'm just recycling the same loop over and over and over and over again. Okay? I don't care what number I want to find. I wish I could click on this. All right. So next thing is I'm just going to add them. All right. Sum is equal to sum plus the old value. Sum is equal to its old value plus whatever's in the list. F list square brackets I. Okay. And then I can show you. All right. Print the sum of all numbers in the list is sum. Right? Hopefully it's right. Before it was 30, right? So you might want to use the built-in function to do the work for you so you can verify your actual work, I guess. But anyway, or you can just start with a very small, simple list and see if it works for that, and then go to a bigger list. So let's, why don't I go in there and make this really simple so that I can illustrate what I'm trying to do. I'm not going to go in there and try to add all these numbers. What am I going to do? Pull out a calculator, try to add a bunch of values? No. Do it like for 1, 2, 3, right? What's the sum of these? 6. What's the average of these? 2. Okay, let's see if it works. This. Okay, 6 works, right? And then what am I going to do for the average? Print. Let's do a variable average here. AVG is equal to sum divided by what? Well, you don't know if it's 3. It might be a million. The length of the list. Okay? Always think of how do I do this little problem? How do I convert this little problem so that it works for 3 to any number? It doesn't have to be 3. You don't know if it's 3. That's the idea. Okay? So sum is divided by the length of the list, which is 3 things, right? You could show yourself len f list if you don't believe it, but we already did that. So then the average is equal to average, right? And that should be a 2. And if it works for these, then it should work for other ones. You can expand the list by a little, you know, add a few numbers here and there, see if it works, maybe change one to negative, that kind of things. Okay? So far so good. Any questions? Yes, sir.
I just had a quick question about the sum, like being a reserved word. If you try to use the function sum, does that?
Yeah, so the question is, since sum is a reserved word, what happens after you do this? You're basically killing that reserved word. You can't use it anymore. So basically up to this point, watch, if I did print sum of f list here, that will be fine, right? If I run it, right, that works. But then if I try to do this here, so I'm going to go after, same thing, there, right? That second one is going to give you an error because you changed the meaning of sum. So as soon as you do, if you have a purple reserved word, right? If you make it equal to something, you're basically killing the meaning of that word, right? So for example, and an easy one is also print, right? So remember how print is also purple, right? I'm going to go in there, I'm going to do this. So if I said, okay, print hi, right? We know that works. Okay? But then if I go in there and I do, okay, now it's going to be print is equal to, I don't know, 0. And then I'm going to do print hi. Right? And if you run that, you're going to get that same error. Type error, blah, blah, is not callable. Run it. Same thing. So that's exactly what you're doing when you're making a purple reserved word equal to something. You're killing the reserved meaning for that word, for everything under it. Okay? It's a good question. Anything else? Okay? So let's take this off. All right, so this is your sum and your average. Now what I'm going to do is, let's say I want to, and I'm going to recycle this thing again. Now I'm just going to write a new one. Okay, so now what I want to do is want to find the min and max in a list. And yes, Python has a min and max, which you don't get to use. Okay, and I'll show you how they work first, and that'll be the end of it for the semester. Okay, so what I'm going to do is, let's say I'm going to have a G list now. G list is equal to 1, 2, -1, 10, 3, 4. Right? There's the middle and the largest and the smallest are somewhere in the middle of this, and yeah, that's it. So if I wanted to, I just do print max G list, and there you go. Yeah, the max is 10. Fantastic. But did I write any code? Do I know how max works? Nope. So therefore, according to my standards, I plagiarized this code. Okay, if you turn this in, you get a 0, maybe even less than 0. If I could put a negative, I'll put a negative if I see this. Okay, so how do I do this? And same thing with the max and min, right, and average and sum. It works the same way. Okay, maybe once we get to once you go to the real world and you start using Python like every day, you don't have to do this. Okay, but for the sake of learning how to program, yeah, you do in my class. Okay. So, want to find the min and max. Let's go with the min. Min in a list, or smallest. Let's call it smallest. Okay? So, I'm going to go in there. I'm going to overwrite min is equal to, and let's just do this first. What's the algorithm that we had for finding smallest? So, algorithm to find smallest. What was the algorithm? Algorithm is step-by-step instructions we need to follow so we can solve this problem, right? What's my algorithm? What's the first step? What do I do? Huh? What's that?
So with your input, you set the input?
There's no input. We're not doing input at all for this.
You said the G list num equals, you don't have a num.
And what's that? Make the first number equal to the smallest. The same thing we did before. Remember how we had to do find smallest, largest, min, all that stuff? We're going to do the same thing. Okay? And I told you that you're going to have to get this by the end of the semester, or you're going to bomb the final exam. So better get it faster. So first thing is make smallest equal to the first number on the list. All right? What was the next thing? What am I going to do? Compare smallest to every other number on the list. And then, if any other number is smaller, make smallest equal to it. Right? These are the 3 simple steps you got to do every time. All right? So you're going to help me do this. I'm going to do, all right, I'm going to say smallest is equal to G list square brackets what? 0. 0, right? The first thing is the 0, okay? So that's the first step. The next thing is I'm going to compare smallest to every other number of the list. What am I going to do? Guess what? I'm going to recycle that loop again. For I in range from 0 to the length of smallest, oops, not smallest, glist, steps of 1, right? And I have to compare smallest to every other number. So if smallest is less than, how do I write any other number on the list? Glist what? Square brackets. What's in the square brackets? We only did it 50 times. I, right? Okay, so if it's I, what am I going to do? I'm going to say smallest is equal to that thing. Glist I. Now that's it. That's all there is. You don't have to write, oh, min, and then you don't know how the min works, right? You wrote your little code, makes perfect sense. If something doesn't work in it, you can adjust it and fix it, and do whatever you want to do. Okay? And then at the end of this whole thing, all right, I am going to show you smallest, print, smallest is smallest. There you go. 10. That's not right. Yeah, because okay, so what did I do? I actually did what I told you not to do. And I was trying to write something that doesn't really make sense the way I wrote it in my words. So I said, if any other number is smaller, but here I said if smaller is less than any other number. So what it did is actually went and found the largest. Okay, so this is no good. I messed that up. So what I have to do is just write this thing the way I meant it. Right? So if any other number, so this is my any other number, is smaller than my smallest. Right? And again, no problem. I had messed up. I go in there and realize what my error is. Quick correction. Run it again. And by the way, this is an example of a logical error or runtime error. Program's running is just not working the way I meant it. Okay? Run. There you go. Found the smallest. And guess what we're going to do for the largest? Same thing. Right? Make it equal to the first thing. Use a loop to go through the list, compare it to every other thing. In fact, I don't even have to start this loop at 0, right? Because I already made, smallest is equal to the first number. It's not going to be less than itself, right? That doesn't make sense. So you could start at 1 here, right? Run it again. But why don't I just leave the loop at 0, right? Because I'm not even going to change anything, not to confuse you. Okay? Any questions? So sum, average, counting, adding to a list, searching through the list for a specific thing that the user enters, finding the smallest, finding the sum and average. Okay? I think that's about all there is with lists. Okay? Any questions? Okay. So let's see, strings. Do I have strings for the day? Yeah, I'm going to tell you about strings too, because strings are lists. Okay, strings are people too. So strings. So if you have a string, you basically have an immutable list, right? So I'm going to show you what that means again. So I'm going to leave this here, all right, because I don't want to mess around with these comments. Okay, so string is it's an immutable list, right? But it's a list. So for example, let's say I have my string is equal to hello. Right? And I can show you the string just like I would with a list. So string equals string. All right? That's the whole string. It doesn't get put in square brackets or characters are not separated by commas because it's not really a list. It's just you could think of it as a list, okay? A list of characters, but it isn't exactly a list. Okay? But all the things that you could do with a list, you could do with a string. So I can show elements or characters of a string using its index. Okay, so I go in there and say, all right, print string 0. All right, when I do this thing should shows the H. Okay, if I run it without the quotes, of course. All right, there it is. There's your H. Okay, so it's not going to show the quotes because it's a string. Okay, so it shows H. Okay, and I can show you the last. So we have how many things? Just like a list, this thing has an index, and it goes from 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Right? So 4 is my last one. So I'm going to go in there. I'm going to show you the last string, the last character of the string. So the last one was a 4. Right? And that's the one time I'm actually going to physically write this thing. So shows O. Shows O. Right? So if I run this thing, it will show me an O. Right? But I'm never going to do that, because what am I going to do? Imagine how many things are in the string and then count them, or maybe ask the user to enter only 4 things. I'm going to use the length, the len of the string to print, let's just do this, number of characters in a string. All right? I just do len string just like I would with a list, and this thing should show me what is it going to show me? What number?
The entire number?
So when I say len of string, what? Huh? 5, right? That's what we've been saying. If you have, if the last index is 4, then you're gonna have 1 plus that in the string. So I run it. There you go. There's 5 characters in the string. Okay. You gotta understand this, because that's what drives your loop. If you thinks it shows you all the numbers, how do you think this loop is working? Doesn't make any sense. Okay. So this is a single number. Okay. All right. So what I'm gonna do is I'm going to use this thing now. So print string square brackets len of string. Is that right? Is that how I want it? Is this the last one?
Yes.
All right. You've been giving me good answers the whole time. You went one bad, right? And you actually got that one right the first time you said. Okay. So, all right. So this is bad, right? This one gives you the index strings. All right. Get this. I'm going to paste this here somewhere. All right. This is bad. Bad. Well, let's just do this. Error. That's the error. Okay. And it is basically the same thing as saying print. I just told it to do print string 5. Right? There's no 5. Right? 5 is how many things are in it, but since the indexes start at 0, the last one is a 5 minus 1, or 4. Right? So if I run this thing, you're going to get the same exact error, which is string index out of range. Right? When we were working with lists, it gave me the list index out of range. Now it's giving me the string index out of range. Right? So if you give it a number that doesn't, goes beyond however many things it has, you get the string index out of range. Okay? So same error. Let me copy. I should have copied it from here. That's that one. Okay, that's the string index out of range. So again, same back thing. So this is using index that does not exist. Okay, so I can't do that. So how am I going to show the last one? Show the last element of a string. All right, print string len string -1. Okay, run it. There you go. That's the O. All right. Questions? Comments, concerns? Okay, so, all right. So you can see that it's pretty much like a, oh, and let me write a loop that shows you every character of a string. Why not? Because for I in range, I'm going to use the same loop again from 0 to the length of the string, because we can measure the length of the string. I'm going to show you print, and let's do the fancy thing that I did before. I'm going to say, all right, string, square brackets, index, square brackets, and string index. All right, and should show me every letter, hopefully. Whoops. Name index is not defined because I called it I. Here, let me just do the quick fix. This one here is index. All right, run it, and there you go. So every character in the string. So what else can I do? How about I look for a letter in the string, right? So let's say I want to, instead of just showing this, right? Well, let's do this. I'll take, I am going to do this.
Hey, I'm sorry. I just had to talk to you about something, but I'll email you about it later. Sorry.
Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to count how many times a certain letter appears in the list, right? So letter is equal to input. What letter would you like to find? All right, and I'm going to use the same loop for I in range from 0 to the length of my string. All right, and I'm going to look for if my string square bracket I is equal to the letter that they want. Okay, and then why don't I count it? Count is equal to 0. Why don't I show you the string before string so you know what it is? String, string. Okay. Then count plus equals 1, also known as count is equal to count plus 1. Okay? And I'll do this. Print the letter was found count times. All right, and run this thing. Maybe I should have shown you the string first so you know what you're looking for. All right. All right, so this is my string. Hello, what letter would you like to find? I want to find the letter Z. It doesn't exist, okay? It's not in there. Okay, let's try it again. What letter do I want to find? Oh, I want to try the letter H. Okay, found it. And same thing, again. Let's try the letter L. Found it. Okay? So, any questions so far? Make sense? Okay, now, so these are all the similarities between a string and a list, right? Now let me show you how they differ in other than appearance, okay? So let's say, so all the things that you could do to a list, you could do to a string or with a string, except what I'm going to show you next. So, and this is the example how strings are immutable, right? String is an immutable list. All right, so let's say I have name is equal to Alex, right? And I want to change the first letter, right? So first let me show this thing. So name, right? And I'm going to call it a name S, so we know it's a string. All right, and then I'm going to do the same thing for this. And I'm going to do name L. So that one will be a list, so you can see how a list would look like. Okay. And I'm going to go in there, separate all these. Okay, so that will be a list, and this here on top is a string. So let me copy this here and show you that too, so you can see how they look different. All right, list next to a string. Okay, so what I'm going to try to do is, first I'm going to do it to the list so that you can see how it works with a list. So I'm going to go and say, all right, name L is equal, name L. Okay, so here's what I want to do. I want to change the first letter the first letter to uppercase A. You tell me. Square brackets what? 0 equals quotes A, right? If I run it, hopefully it should show the A uppercase, and it does, no problem. Okay, so you can change a list like that, no problem, because we've been doing that all this time. Okay. But now let me try to do the same thing to the string. So I'm going to go in there and say name S0 is equal to uppercase A. And now watch what it says. Now, string object does not support item assignments. So this error right there, that is the meaning of that strings are immutable. I cannot change the individual. All right, so this here, that gives me this error. That, right? String object does not support item assignment, and this is true because this error means you cannot change the individual elements of a string because they're immutable, because string is immutable. Okay, so the immutable thing is kind of a misnomer because you could change it, right? I could change the whole string, and let me show you how I can do this. So if I go in there and say, all right, name S is equal to Alex, that's okay. Now I just made a whole new string and I made this thing equal to it. No problem. Okay, so this is okay. Okay to do this. You are assigning a whole new string, not changing individual element. Okay? So, all right. So now what I want to do is, now I want to change the last one. But I want to do it this way. Okay, I want to do it, it would be nice if I could click. I want to do it, I want to be able to do this to my string. Okay, because I'm not going to go and manually type things necessarily. I don't know, maybe let's do this. For example, I want to change, now what I want to do is, want to change the last letter of the string. Okay, so basically what I'm trying to do is I want to do this. I want to say, all right, name S square bracket the length of name S minus 1, which is the last one, is equal to this. All right, try it. Nope. Same error. String object does not support item assignment. Okay. Well, fortunately, in Python, you can easily convert one thing to another thing. All right. So the original string. So I can't do this yet. All right. If I do that, you get that the error that you got up here. So what I'm going to do is first, I'm just going to go in there and tell it. So first, change the string to a list. And that's super easy. You're just saying, all right, I'm going to say that you, actually, let me first show it to you. Well, I already showed it. So the string right here is Alex. So right here, this one here, name S is the Alex. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to convert this thing to a list. So I'm going to say, okay, you are equal to yourself, but a list. Okay? So I'm casting this thing, I'm forcing it to become a list here on this side, but I'm telling it, okay, and then I'm assigning whatever I cast to its own value. In other languages, like Java, like C, this is not allowed because when you declare something to be a string, it stays as a string forever until the end of the program. Python lets you do this. So then I'm going to go and do a print name S. name S. All right. So you're going to see this thing, that the little Alex there is going to change to this, right? So name S changed from this to this. Maybe I should label it up there too. So you can see what happens. Name S equals. All right. So it goes from this to this. Okay. All right. So I turned it into a list, and you already know that you could do this kind of stuff to a list, right? So why don't I go in there? I'm going to go and tell it, okay, I want. By the way, it did not give me the error message now, right? Before it was giving me error message, and now as soon as I change this thing to a list, it stopped giving me the error message because it lets me do that. Okay? So the next thing is, if I want to show you this thing, it's still a list. Okay? So name S is equal to name S. Right? So it's still a string, which is what you would expect. Then the next thing you want to do is, now you want to turn this thing. Where did I do this? Let me get this here and just put it in the right place. So, all right. So first thing was change the string to a list. Then I showed it to you as a list. Okay. And then I changed. I'm going to change the last one to capital X. Right. So last letter is going to go, instead of capital A, I'm going to capital X. Okay. And then I'm showing it to you. Let me just show it to you one more time, just to make sure, since I move things around. There you go. So changing the uppercase, the last one to uppercase. Okay. So next step is I got to convert this thing to a string, back into its original form. And that goes like this. I say name S is equal to, let's see if I remember, dot join. So these are two single quotes. These are not double quotes. It's not like one of those. It's a single, right? And then I'm going to do join, and then I'm going to put the name of my. It actually has, like Python tells you, right? It's the iterable. What's the iterable? The iterable is going to be the thing that we go through, right? With the iterations, or what we're doing with the loop. When you go through every character in a list, you're iterating through the list. So that's the iterable thing, the thing that we're iterating through. Okay? Anyway, so name S, and then hopefully, if you keep your fingers crossed for me, it will work. And I run this again, and there you go. So you just have to do a few steps, right? The next step was turn here, turn the string back into a list. Question?
When do we turn the list back into a string?
Sorry, you're right. Turn the list back into a string. Okay? And that was an illustration of how strings are in immutable lists. You can still do all the other things that you would with a list. You can look through them, find the characters, change the characters if you want to, but you have to turn the thing into a list first before you do that. Okay? Yes, sir?
Is there a way to do name S equals str of name S?
Well, we could try it. Let's try this. So the suggestion was, can we, instead of this, can we do this? Name S is equal to str names. And believe me, if it was that easy, I probably would have used that way. Oh, no, doesn't work. Right? Nothing. Right? So yeah, it was a good idea, and trust me, I probably tried that first. But no, that wasn't that. It wasn't that. It's not just that easy. So Python is, it's user friendly, but up to a point. Okay. So let's check it again. All right, there you go. It turns into a string. These here, they don't have to be single quotes. Just like with anything in Python, it doesn't know the difference between single and double quotes. So I can do double, hopefully, and it should still work. Okay, and that's it. Okay, so that's the process of changing something in a string. And Yeah, and last but not least, just to remind you what string concatenation is, just remember, string concatenation means adding strings together. So if I have first is equal to hello with a little space, second is equal to world with an exclamation, and I do both is equal to first plus second, then you're going to see print both is equal to this. Right? Just puts the two strings together into one big string. Concat means adding strings together. So this means turning two strings or more strings into one big string, right? Which is very handy, okay? But sometimes you run into some unexpected things, like say, for example, you have, well, let's just do this. So let's say, for example, so adding string numbers does not do math correctly. So if I had num is equal to 1, and then I have num2 is equal to 2, num3 is equal to 3, and I said total is equal to num plus num2 plus num3, and if I show you the total, what is it going to show me?
The ASCII codes?
That would be a good guess, but 1, 2, 3, yeah, right? Since you'll just follow this rule that it did to these two strings, and we'll try to put the two strings together, or two or more strings together. Then you're gonna see, whoops, syntax error. You get the. Did I show it? I didn't show it. Total. There you go. That's kind of stuff happens. And this will happen when you read things from a file. So when you read something from a file, it'll always be a string, and then you try to do some kind of math with it. You can't. How can you do math? You just cast the strings. So to do math, cast the strings. You're going to have to cast each of them. So you're going to do, all right, total is equal to, these are all ints. So int num plus int num2 plus int num3, and if I do this again, then you should see hopefully that that's a 6. And you do. Okay? Questions?
Yes. So you have you need the string concatenation, you got 1, 2, 3.
Yep.
Can't you just do string concatenation and then, or correction, can't you cast your string into a number and then treat them without actually going through the process? So for instance, if you have an entire document
Yeah.
and that document is full of numbers and you want those numbers to be treated all as integers.
You're going to have to cast them all.
Individually?
Oh, yeah. Yep. Yep. Okay. So you have to cast them all. Cast every one of them. Any other questions? All right. So, well, let's see what you have to do for today. So you know what immutable is. You cannot change the elements. Was that? All right. So what do you have to do for today? You have to find smallest, largest, sum of average in the list with some random numbers in it. Or no, the user tells you how many numbers are going to be in the list in advance, right? And that's how many times that's how many things you're going to add to the list. And then from there, you're going to figure out the sum, the average, the min, and the max. And there you go. You're not allowed to use sample, sum, min, max, average, sort, sorted. It's like I just have to keep adding more things to this list of things you can't use because somebody always finds something else that's built into the language that they can take advantage of and to do the work for them. But I think I've just about exhausted them with these here. Okay? So this list has grown over the past 7 years since I've been teaching this class. It started as nothing, and then I was like, wait, no. You don't get to just use the built-in functions without writing your code. Anyway, so now make another list. Oh, and then after that, make another list, but with double the values of the first list. In fact, I'm gonna add this. I'm gonna make it different. So let me change this. Now make another list, but with double the values of the first list, and then make a third list with the list from 5, but in reverse. So let's say, for example, let me change this sample run here. So let's say you have, they enter 3 numbers, right? So first number is, we're going to put the 3 here. We're going to put the 1 in there, whatever. And then the last one is going to be the 2 is in there, right? Okay, so then my list 1 will be that you make is 3, 2, 1. Oops, 3, 1, 2. 3, 1, 2, right? That's the list 1. The list 2 is going to be these values doubled. 6, 1, 4. And then the list 3 is going to be these numbers, the top numbers, but in reverse. So it's going to be 4, 1, 6. Okay? And if you understood what I was telling you today, this should not be a problem. Okay? Except I haven't shown you how to show a list in reverse, but I'll do that right now. Okay?
Just go backwards in your for loop.
Yeah, but I'll show you how to do that just in case people get confused. But from what I've given you today, you should be able to write a for loop that goes backwards in the list, but I'll show you that too, okay? All right, so the sum of these is, whatever, just, so this is, and let's do this. We're going to sum, let's do this. Yeah, we'll do the sum of the first one. So we're going to do, first one is a 6, average is 6 divided by 3, which is 2.0, right? Smallest is the 1, largest is the 3, and I'm going to take that out. All right, so these are the 3 lists. That's that. Yeah, okay. So what I have to do is, yeah, whoever submitted something, go fix it a little. I know, I think it's, yeah, 1 person. Okay, so, well, 3 people. So anyway, change that a little. Yeah, this is just the algorithm to find the smallest, which I already showed you. Okay, so one more thing. Let's say that's the one thing I haven't shown you is how to, and this is your hint. I'll put this as a hint. This is assignment P22 hint. That's the only hint I'm going to give you on this thing. So make a loop that shows a list in reverse. So let's say I have z-list. Z-list is equal to 1, 2, 3, 4, right? And I want to show this thing in reverse. So I do for I in range, and you help me with this thing. Where does this thing start? Let me just remind you of the values of these indexes. So index, this is 0, 1, 2, 3. All right. So I'm going for, I'm trying to make a loop. I'm making a loop that's going to generate these values for me, but in reverse. So what's the first one I give it?
5?
You don't know if it's 5. Maybe a million things in the list.
Minus 1.
Length minus 1. Okay, that kind of makes sense. Let's see if it works. Length of the z list minus 1. Okay, and where do I want this thing to end? 0. Okay, so what do I got to put in there? All right, I heard a 0. I'm going to go with a 0. All right, and I wanted to go which way, in which direction? Forward. I want to go backward. So what do I tell it? -1, right? So it's going to go backwards. It's going to start at this last value, and it's going to go back to 0, right? And first thing is, and that's what I'm telling you, test your loops. Unless you have written a loop that works the same way and you're just copy pasting it a bunch of times, that's one thing. But right now I'm doing a whole different idea in my head. I don't know if it's going to work. I heard good guesses, but I'm not sure. Let's double check, because that's the name of the game. You just have to test your programs all the time. All right. So I'm going to do print. I'm just going to show the index. Index is equal to, before I even plug it into anything, I'm just going to show you the value of index. Is it getting me these numbers in reverse? There's 3, 2, 1, 0. Index goes 3, 2, 1. It doesn't get to the 0. Let me put a little separator in there. So how do I make it go to 0? Okay, exactly. So I wanted to go 1 further, so it's going to go -1. So it's the length of the thing, -1, -1, -1. Very hard to remember if you can't think about it. Okay? And you should be able to think about it, right? That's the mental gymnastics that I'm doing here. Because the hints for these are going to decrease. I want you to be able to solve these problems on your own without somebody holding your hand and telling you, oh, well, this is this and this is that. That's the process we're learning here. Okay? And you're definitely not going to get that by Googling things. FYI. Okay? So now the next thing is run it again. The best way to learn is just run. Run your program a bunch of times. See what happens. Okay? Is it working the way you think? Is it doing what you want it to do? If you don't know what it's supposed to do, then you're screwed. You gotta come up with the algorithm first before you can even do anything else. All right? Step 1, do this. Step 2, do this. Okay? So anyway, I'm getting these numbers 3, 2, 1, 0. Great. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go in there and I'm just gonna show you the thing, print z list square brackets index square brackets and z index, whoops, z list index. All right, so now this thing should show me these numbers in reverse. 4, 3, 2, 1, like that. Okay? So now you know how to make a loop that goes in reverse to show, a lister in reverse. Questions? Okay. So, I think that's pretty, well, one more thing. Let me just check 23, count letters in a sentence. I already showed you how to do that, so I pretty much solved this thing for you, mostly. The only challenging thing that might be is, how do you put one list in the other list in reverse? And I kind of gave you the answer to that too. All right? I'm holding your hand too much, but all right. So save this, and I'm going to upload it for you. And that's all there is for today. So just get started and let me know if you have any questions or help. Okay? So that's it.